Let's go and turn on the ignition. Turning on the ignition. Let's have a look at the dash when it turns on. Cool graphics. And there are two riding modes on this motorcycle. One is road and the other one is sport. We'll come to that later. Now you can see it's on the road. There's a fuel gauge too. Now without further ado, let's get on with riding this bike. The speedo. Can you stand up? Yeah, it's okay. The shock is adequate. Yeah, the shock is adequate as far as I'm concerned. Very playful. You can change the directions however you want, so that way it is okay. Does it have enough grunt to overtake in the traffic? Yeah, it has enough grunt to overtake in the traffic, even on the highway. I would say in the right gear it has enough grunt. It's absolute. The clutch is very light. When you're cornering, it gives a lot more confidence compared to hypermotard. Hypermotard is so high up the ground. For me, I'm 5'9" and I feel like my legs are bended too much. When you're stationary, there is some amount of heat coming in, but that's how a V-twin engine from Ducati, because one of the cylinder head is directly under your seat, so there is a little bit of heat coming when you are stationary. But when you are on the move, I do not feel any kind of heat at all. I feel perfectly okay. But other than that, it feels very playful. It doesn't feel the weight. I feel hypermotard is a little bit more heavier compared to this one. You can change the directions on this one relatively fast. Is it a good beginner's bike? Yeah. Is the seat more soft compared to hypermotard? Yes. Can you do long distances on this one compared to hypermotard? I definitely think yes. Brake, is it firm? Is it good enough? The single disc brake, is it good enough? Yeah, in my opinion, the single disc brake is good enough. Through the city riding, is there any heat coming through when the bike is moving? No, there is no heat coming through when the bike is moving. When the bike is stationary, yeah, there will be some amount of heat coming through. It's not too expensive. The Icon is 62,000. For insurance and taxes and all of it, 62,000. But I think this is a good bike. Trying to do a Scrambler Icon walkaround. It's got a DRL, daytime running lights, LED headlamp, LED indicators. Front turn signals looks like this. Looks good. The rear indicators, turn signals looks like this. Looks good. 41mm non-adjustable Kayaba forks at the front. 150mm of travel. Light alloy wheels, 18-inch wheels, wrapped with Pirelli MT60 RS tires. Icon black, 803cc air-cooled engine. Does not generate any kind of heat when you are on the move. But when you are standing stationary, if you are stuck in the traffic, you will have heat coming out because one of the cylinder head is directly under your crotch. So there is a little bit of heat coming out when you are stationary, but other than that, this is completely okay. Handles perfectly well. This is got a skid plate on this one. I'm not really sure. This came as an add-on on this one. This has got a Terminioni slip-on exhaust. The normal Icon does not come with the Terminioni exhaust, so this could have been an add-on. Kayaba shocks at the back, 150 millimeters of travel. Only preload adjustability at the Kayaba forks at the back, double-sided swing arm, and 245 millimeter single piston, single disc with cornering ABS, 17-inch wheel, Pirelli MT60 RS tires, light aluminum alloy wheel, 15 sprocket chain drive in the front, 42 at the rear. No adjustability on the Kayaba upside down forks in the front. 150 millimeters of travel, 330 millimeter single disc, radially mounted Brembo 4-piston floating caliper, cornering ABS, air-cooled L-twin engine, tubular steel trellis frame, 803cc, 73 horsepower and 65 newton meters of torque. 13.5 liter fuel tank. It's got a dry weight of 170 kilograms and a wet weight of 185 kilograms. The standard seat height is 795 millimeters. Lower seat height of 780 millimeters is available, and a higher seat of 810 millimeters is also available. Let's talk about the riding mode configuration on the Ducati Scrambler. There are two riding modes which you can configure. One is the sport and the other one is the road. Under these two riding modes, you can configure two things. One is the power and the other one is DTC, which stands for Ducati Traction Control. Now, under the power configuration, you have two choices. One is high, which is equivalent to the dynamic delivery of power, and the other one is medium, which is equivalent to the smooth delivery of the power. Now, keep in mind that the power figures produced by the engine is at 73 horsepower, and that does not change. We'll come to that later. In the traction control, there are 4 levels of traction control. The level 4 is most intrusive and it will help riders to ride on a wet condition. Level 1 is the least intrusive and it will help riders if they are into a performance-oriented riding. You can also turn off the traction control if you like to do that. That you will tend to do if you are an experienced rider and want to take this motorcycle on a slight off-road conditions. Now, let's come back to the power. The power produced by this motorcycle does not change depending upon the choices which you make, which means that whether you choose a dynamic delivery of power, which is equivalent to high, or a smooth delivery of power, which is equivalent to medium, the power at your disposal remains the same exactly at 73 horsepower. Only that delivery of the power is going to be impacted by your choice. Now, on the traction control, there is 4 levels of traction control, what we discussed earlier, and 2 and 3 levels of traction control falls in between. Now, keep in mind that it's totally up to the user on how they want to configure these riding modes. Usually, what many of the riders tend to do is that on the sport riding mode, they will tend to configure the engine as high or dynamic, and on the traction control, they'll probably set it at 1, which is the least intrusive. Now, on the road-based riding mode, most of the users will tend to set the engine at a medium or smooth delivery of power and traction control somewhere between 3 and 4, which is most suited for the riding. So it totally depends upon the user of this motorcycle on how they want to configure these riding modes, whether it is the sport or the road. All of these things which I'm trying to explain on how to configure your power or how to configure your traction control or how to configure your riding modes, these are very basic in nature. The reason I want to spend some amount of time in explaining these things is with the thought that this will definitely help some of those new Ducati riders out there. But if there are experienced Ducati riders who are watching this particular video, this would probably seem to them as a waste of time. My apologies if you feel that way, but let's move on. Pin code is, you have your own pin code just like an ATM pin. So when you buy the bike, you have to change your pin code. If you're buying a second-hand bike gear to get this pin code changed at the dealer. So just like Monster and Hypermotard, in this instrument cluster you put a deep press. It will let you choose between the riding modes. Right now it's in sport. I can change to road, and now I am in the road riding mode. So for me to change the riding mode, use this button, deep press, and it will get you the riding mode change menu. Now I'm in the road. I can change it to sport. I mode it up sport, and I'm going to select it, press it, change to the sport riding mode. So deep press for you to change your riding modes. To get into the settings, slide press. It let you choose the riding mode, info display, and all of it. Riding mode configuration, sport configuration if you want to configure. I already did configure that earlier, so I'm going to exit out. So Scrambler Icon, it's got a Terminoni exhaust. The Terminoni exhaust sounds really good. I want you to hear it. That's how the Scrambler Terminoni exhaust sounds like. It makes a big difference when you have the Terminoni exhaust and without. Sounds absolutely good. Come and check out the Scrambler either in Ducati PJ showroom or in Veli Sungai Bulau. This specific video is shot in Veli Sungai Bulau, so come over and check it out. Thank you for watching.